Hey y'all, it's your girl Whitney from Whitney Escapes, and we're going live. And today our special guest is Sharon G. Flake, and I'm so excited to have her here. She is the author of one of my favorite books, The Skin I'm In. Can you guys see this? And she was so kind to come and join me live short notice, and I'm just so excited that she's here. So hi, Sharon.
Hi, Whitney and company. How are you guys?
We are great that you're here. I'm still like, I said, I hope she really show us, because I was like, I hope this is really her page. Like, people didn't spam me. And to know that
Well,
it's
you
really
know
you,
what?
just makes me
It's
about
funny
that.
because people don't go to my website a lot of times, which is probably better because it goes
Hmm.
right to my email. And sometimes when they go through my other pages, it goes into my phone. And I tell people it's like pages, right? That you sit on top of each other. And I might mean to
Hmm.
get to you, but you're drowned under all these other pages. But in my if it comes to my email, then I said, okay, Whitney's there. I'm not going to delete her till I deal with her. The other ones I sort of
I
forget
like
about.
that.
They get on top, everybody's on top of me. But I'm glad
Yeah.
we reached each other. I'm glad you sent me a wonderful letter. So that was very nice.
Yeah, because it's true. It's a true story. So, guys, if you don't know, The Skin I Am is the first book I ever read from the beginning to the end. And that was a huge accomplishment for me because I had a struggle with reading. And the reason, and I was going to a primary white school. I was the second, only two black girls, me and another young lady, in the whole entire school. And when I went to the book fair, this book was there. This is the original book, but I want another copy. So that's how you know I had this book. And the reason I picked it, I'm like, oh, she looks like me. Out of, when you're in a school full of Caucasian people, you're on the back and you finally see a book for someone who represents you, and it was the first book I ever read, and I absolutely loved it. I saved it just in case I had a daughter, and I do now. She's in third grade, so I told her next year I want her to read this herself because it just was inspirational. I enjoyed it, and it was relatable. Not only that, look at me. All black books they could have. Mhm. Chose hers. Yes, that's my mother in the background because she remembers that.
Hi, mother.
She's like, not only that, that was the only black book they had in the school, and they chose, which is true. Out of the whole book fair, you were the only
I was the
black
only
author,
one.
the only one, and you
Wow.
happen to have a girl who looks. I can say she looks like me.
Well, I mean, and that's proof that representation matters, that seeing ourselves matters, right?
It does.
Um, and seeing and reading other people's stories too, right? So that there are a lot of people of different ethnic groups who have picked up the book. It doesn't look like them, but they find themselves in it anyway. But especially generations of Black girls, I've been really blessed that have grown up on the book about a dark skinned girl who gets bullied by other Black kids um, and has to learn to love herself and find her voice. So it's about finding yourself and bullying and self-esteem and colorism.
Hmm.
And a lot of times people think it's in our community. We sometimes think it's just us teasing each other, having a hard time with others that are darker skinned. But it really is anywhere that was colonized, right, around the planet.
That's
So
correct.
you have Hispanic kids and kids from England and all over the world who pick up the book and see themselves. So thank you for because I asked you the question of what made you pick the book up, what made it resonate to you. And so I'm starting to ask people. The last couple of years, I've been asking people that question.
But yeah, that it resonated with me. Being another young lady, and she grew up there. I moved to that area, older, so I was more urban than she was. And it's even in my yearbook, I'm in almost every picture because I'm the only brown skinned girl and like who's actually brown skinned. But I love the book. I even have the Hungry One. I just kept on buying books by you because I just love your writing.
Oh, money hungry. Thank you.
Yes, I love that one too. But I told her that I realized through another book club that I'm in that she wrote a sequel to this book last year, which I plan on getting. And then she also said she has another one coming out. So book club family, we have to support and get all three books when they all come out. and I'm gonna wait and read it all together.
altogether. Well, the second book is The Life I'm In, that really got 4-star reviews. I was up for a $50,000. I was shortlisted for a $50,000 literary prize because of that book. Um, I missed it, but it was good to have it recognized. And believe it or not, it's from the bully's perspective, right? The skin I'm in is from Malika's perspective. First line of
Hmm.
the book is, the first time I saw her face, I got a bad feeling inside, which was a teacher coming in to Malika's life who plays an important role in her development, but not the only adult, right?
Hmm.
Her father writes poetry
Exactly.
celebrating her beauty, and he's dead. Um, there's her mom, there's her friends, and then there's Charlize Jones, who people have asked for years, what happened to her? A lot of people didn't like her. She's a terrible bully. What
Hmm.
happened to Charlize Jones? What became of her? And what people don't understand is, once I finish a book, I don't really think about what happened to the characters, right? I don't. For me, the story is closed, but but we are in this together, right? You as a reader, you as a
Hmm.
book club member, we're in this together. So you finish the story, you all add to the story, right? And so, what, 20 years after The Skin I'm In, I wrote The Life I'm In, for a lot of reasons. People wanted to know what happened to Shar, and then it deals um, with human trafficking. That's one theme in the book,
Mm.
because there's so much of that goes on. It deals with redemption and second chances. Um, that question we sometimes ask ourselves: is God in our mess? Where is God, right? When you fall down and
Yes.
skin your knee, or you're trafficked, or your house burns down. And so that's a question that sort of rolls through that book. And then there's a third book, which I hand in tomorrow, which I was supposed to hand in, you know, let me see, I think last Friday. And so I've been working 10-hour days when you get to that final crunch time. And that's from John John's perspective. John John's one of the people that tease Malika. And you guys, as readers,
Hmm.
always ask me, didn't he like her? Didn't he like
I
her?
thought he did. I thought it's
Well,
like
you'll
I
find
still
out in
think
this
he did.
book. It's
Because
one
I'm
of
like,
my
boys
funnier
tease
books.
girls. And how he was teasing her made it feel like, okay, he likes her, but he at that age didn't know how to express that he liked her.
Right. Well, it's about um him and them, but it's really is about boys and fathers. That's the
Mm.
overarching sort of thing. Um, and love. There's a lot of John turns out to be a very sort of romantic fellow who does not sort of know how to express it. And part of what I wanted to do is that we don't always see black boys in different kinds of ways in books. Sometimes the full arc of black boys, and I'm
Hmm.
for all those other, because I've had some sweet black boy characters, some tough ones, some caring ones, some not so caring. And so I'm one of those writers, like, okay, there's a million ways to tell that story, so I'm not going to knock on anybody's way of telling the story, but I think he's a very different kind of character. I think
Yeah.
I like him, so I'm hoping I handed it to my
I
edit.
would like him.
I
And
handed it
I
to
was
my editor tomorrow, so I hope she likes it.
I love the fact that you just mentioned how you touched on all different types of black boys. Because what really got me into like reading besides your book, as a kid you read it, then I fell off and then I got back. But once I had my son, which is my firstborn, and I also have a daughter, so I have two children, a boy and a girl. And when it was time to read to him and go into book fairs and stuff, it was not a lot of literature written for him. And if it is written where a black cover, it wasn't by a black author. So the wording wasn't authentic to something that he can relate to all the time. So I think that's very important that you pick different types of, characters and boys, because even though we're all brown skinned women or brown skinned boys, we're not all the same. So
Right.
everything doesn't always relate. So I love when authors who actually are within that race writes about it because it sounds more authentic, and then they understand like everybody doesn't like collard greens. I do, but my sister doesn't. Everybody doesn't hang out at the corner store. Some kids do this, and they have different personalities. I have a boy and a girl, and they are totally different. And even me and my sisters, we are only like a year apart, all of us, like 2 and then a year, and we're totally different as adults. So you can't put us in a box. And I think it's so beautiful that you write characters that can relate to people, and they're not all the same.
They're not all the same. I do write about the inner city because I love the inner city. I was born there. I live in the Pittsburgh, and I'm home a lot in Philly, so I'm right back in my old neighborhood. And my thing is always, and there are a lot of books coming out where we have Black middle class kids, which is good because you need to see
Hmm.
all kinds of kids. But even within the inner city, what I try to tell people is or urban setting or city, whatever people want to call it, that there's a million different kind of stories here, right? Like on my dad's block, um, average income, I think, like I checked 5 years ago, was like $35,000, right? So my dad, I've been saying lately, I'm going to ask him, how much did you make? My father was dug ditches for the city with the gas company and laid pipes. And so I know he probably didn't make a lot of money, but out of this house came me, my niece, they also, my brother, which was a cameraman for ABC and some other networks, my my niece was raised here, who ended up being going to medical school in Cuba, right? With which means that the whole curriculum was in Spanish, and now she's finishing up in Chicago, like her
Wow.
residency, a girl across the street who went to Columbia, a girl around the corner who became an assistant superintendent. So when I look at the inner city, I see a lot of that. I don't see just one thing where people try to
Hmm.
put you in a box and sort of leave you there. That's why Miss Saunders, she goes into the school, and I say, for the skin I'm in, she comes from corporate America, right?
Hmm.
And so that sort of thing. But for sometimes people think she's white, right? Because
Yeah.
I never say her race. It wasn't. I just didn't. I thought, I'm gonna tell you, when I wrote that book, and Ms. Cassandra talks about the community. I thought that would be enough for people to get it. But since then, the community term has been co-opted, right? So everybody has it. But again, everybody in the book is Black. And so it's one of those things where sometimes people don't see us a certain way. So you assume she's not. But
Yeah.
there's nothing about her for you to assume that she isn't,
Hmm.
right? Um, and so I don't know. I love what I do. I love hearing from people like you that at almost 67, I still get to do this. Yay.
And I'm excited that you still do it. And like you said, it makes a huge impact. And it's like a learning thing. Because, for instance, I was in the inner city and I was raised by my mother. I had a relationship with my father, but we live in Connecticut and my father lives in North Carolina. So I only saw him during summers. But now I'm married and I have 2 children. And I tell people my children's reality and my reality is not the same.
Mm.
So to parent kids in a whole different dynamic, like I didn't have 2 parents, I think so it's very interesting. That's why I always tell it's important to have different characters because I have to remember they don't think like how I thought. They don't know what it's like to be hungry. They don't know what it's like to, when you just have a single mom who's trying to take care of all her kids and working 5 jobs. They have liberty of being a house with 2 parents. So I to my husband, I said, we have to realize how to parent them, and not treat them like how we were brought up because that's not their same reality. And having books to make you feel like you can relate and to show you something different is very important. And I'm glad that now it's being more prevalent. But 20 years ago,
Oh
it
yeah.
wasn't that prevalent.
No, you're right. Absolutely. Because now you have Derek Barnes, you have Jason. Why can't I think of Jason's last name? Ooh, I just hit a brain freeze. I'm sorry. Jason Reynolds. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Jason Reynolds. You have so many and still not enough, right? You have so
Exactly.
many more than 20 years ago, but you still, there's for anybody in your audience that wants to write or is writing, this is a wonderful group to write about. The middle school, the high school, the elementary. A lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon. Um, I don't always like it. That's just me. And I don't mean individual. I don't mean people that are sitting in their houses and they're writing or they had a baby and want to take a stab at it. But I do mean the people who, for me, I'm being judgmental, the people who have decided, oh, I could get rich doing this, which most of us aren't, um, right? Or this is
Mhm.
another part of my, what do you call it? This is another feather in my cap. I'm sort of passing through here because this is a very committed group of readers. You're right. Young people,
Mhm.
you held on to that book that long, right? I have young
Mhm.
people that say, you know what, Miss Sharon, I read your book every year for 10 years. You don't get that kind of commitment on the adult side, right? You
No.
really don't. You might read it one or two times. You might do three times. But I form book clubs around your book, Miss Sharon, right? So
Yeah.
I moved 10 times and I always took your book, or you bought three copies of it. And the group I write for, the kids that teen, young adult, children authors write for are so amazing. They're
Yes.
so committed as an audience. They need the work and they value it so much that
Mhm.
I want people to write for them, but to want to not just I could write a book, right? But I'm going to be writing for some of the most amazing human beings on the planet. That's a whole nother kettle of fish. That's
That
a
is
whole
true.
nother kettle of fish. And it's an honor and it's a privilege. Um, and they will follow you, right? They will follow you. They will follow your work, and you go to their schools and you write them letters, and you don't just write the book and sort of disappear, or write the book and go on the road and never see them. I imagine there's some people, if they're big enough, that they do, but most of those people are not like in this industry in the sense of this is
Mhm.
how they make their bread and butter. It's more people that are doing 50 other things, and this is one more thing. And I'm not, you that's my pet peeve. So,
I agree. I agree. I actually wrote a children's book. It's on Kindle, and I did it when my son was in kindergarten, so that was 6 years ago. And it didn't go far, and it broke my heart then because I spent a lot of money on the graphics because that's why I realized there wasn't a lot of books. Because I always volunteer in the library. So the library is like, "Won't you write a book then?" Because I was like talking to the people who come in, like school. I'm like, "Why don't you have enough books for people who look like me?" And they're like, "Well, we do." I said, "No, all these are like kids who are struggling. Why can't we just have a kid who's going to the grocery store like you have with these other children? We didn't have that." And then so I was like, I did write a one that's on Kindle, and my sister's like, "Well, you should just still keep on writing." And I wrote, but I didn't publish anything because I'm like, if I
but you
do it, they have
shouldn't.
to be told.
I'm not going to say you shouldn't. Here's what I would suggest to you: if you want to write, then then you should write. You should get in a group with people who write for young people. You
Mm-hmm.
should try to go mainstream. And I know a lot of people are going to say, you're against self publishing. I am absolutely not against self publishing. The thing about it is what you were trying to do, right? You might have had an amazing, brilliant book, but it's the marketing that also makes the difference. And it's the
Yeah.
marketing of the major houses that helps you. The reason why the skin I'm in is like sold on every continent is because of marketing. I wrote an amazing book. I did. But guess what? There's a lot of amazing things. There's a lot of amazing dancers and singers, right? And books out there that people never have heard about. It's easy. It's on one hand, it's easier to market in a way because of all these outlets, but but the publishers have their hands on the pulse of how to distribute those books, right? So when The Skin
Mm-hmm.
I'm In came out, Disney was my publisher. They got it to all the teachers, all the schools. I went to all the conferences and all those plays, right? And so that's where I would say, if your sister's saying, let's write another book, absolutely. I would do it,
I have it. I haven't published them because I
but
had to
maybe
pay
you
like
shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't.
because
Maybe
I wrote them, but
right.
it's the graphics. Because it's like I'll send you a copy
No,
because it was a children's
go
book,
go ahead.
and it was like for smaller children at the time because he was little. So I was basically my son and daughter journey as kids. Like them,
Yeah.
it's like real life stories of theirs that I just wrote out and made it for kids. And I did I'll have somebody who did all the pictures and stuff because it's a picture book, you know. So, but as I get older, yeah, it could be like that. But I just felt like they could never find themselves in books. So I just wrote their story, like every little thing. If we went on vacation, we went to the store, stuff that was funny that they done, I just literally wrote it all out. And it's true story, but it's fiction, you know?
Oh
And I was like,
yeah.
but the graphic is so much money to do the graphic. I don't know. I still
Well,
have them.
I think it depends on the why. Why are you doing it? If you're doing it
Yeah.
because you're like, hey, I have kids, I want them to see themselves. I wrote a book and I read it to my kids and my nieces and my nephews in the church, and that works for you, then that is absolutely fine. But if you
Mhm.
have if you're some excuse me out there who is dying to write, you think you were born to be a writer, then you ought to probably be doing something different. And that's
Yeah.
something different is, okay, I need to get in a group with people who actually write. I need to take a class on how do you actually write. I'm going to tell you, to me, for me, picture books are the most difficult. I wrote
Yeah.
one to my second picture book I just wrote. There's one picture book I've had the best people in this business because I know them read this. That is not my skill set. I'd rather write a 300-page book than a picture book because my brain can't make it work. I'm determined to try to figure it out. But one book I've been writing on off and on for 3 years. I haven't even, you know what I mean? So it's not an easy thing
Mm-mm.
for me. So it has to also be, what is your gift? What is your skill set? If you're a writer, is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? Is it picture books? Is it middle grade? I went to Highlights for Children's workshop when I was in my 30s, and they had an editor read your stuff. And I had written like teenager book and I had picture book and I sent it to her and I remember her coming back and said your skill set is teenagers, and she was right on the money. So that's one thing. Is this my skill set? Why am I doing this? Is it just for fun? I will tell you, when you send books to publishers, they don't want to see graphics. Unless you're the graphic person, and unless you're the illustrator and the author, they don't want to see that. Now you did it because you were creating a whole book. That's very different. But if you're deciding at one point, well, I'm going to send this to Random House, don't send it with graphics because they
Mm.
will help you. They will hire a designer. They will send you and say, Sharon, this is what these are the three looks we're thinking about when we see your work. What do you think? And so, but again, when you're doing it yourself, of course, you're going to need the graphic designer. It's going to cost you a bit of money. So I would just decide, what do you want to do? And if you want to go down this road, then am I willing to like put in the time and the energy and do the work? Because it's not going to be, and I hope I don't sound like I'm chastising you, am I? I'm speaking
No,
beyond you. I'm
no.
really
I
speaking to your
think this is
audience
great,
too.
even for people who are listening. In my mind, I'm like, I'm just going to read your book, Sharon. But I think what you're saying is very important because, like you said, I did it with a different purpose. I was just tired of not seeing stuff
Exactly.
that looked like my son. It wasn't like one day I wanted to be a writer. It just happened to flow in the book and it being good. Everybody who reads like this is a really good book, and they kept on saying you should put it out there. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna invest and I'm gonna put it out there. And I even got a physical book just so my kids can have it. You
Right.
know,
That's which
get
is
a
good. I
physical
think
book
that's
and you can
good.
see it, and you can see it on Kindle. So they get excited to know about them, but I haven't done anything further with it. I right now just love reading, but it keeps on popping up because people keep on asking me, when are you gonna do it? I'm just like, I went out for a different purpose. I was just
Right.
tired of searching for books. I lived work before the pandemic. I worked at the library, and because I was the only brown colored person that worked there, when it was always Black History Month, I used to ask for us to put can you make up like I worked in the kids department, find books. So I used to pull out all their Black books, and I told the lead library, I said, none of these books are written by Black people. Just because there's a Black face, I said Google, and she said they read to their whole catalog and try to and research. She goes, it's not that many books, and then she started finding stuff. I said, yeah, but it's like people who don't look like us like to write about us. And that was another thing too. So I'm like the whole catalog has changed at the library. I know it's important and we need it, but like you said, you know the difference when it's someone's passion or when someone's just writing to get rich from other people who in a area that we know that is needed. But I don't know. I enjoy. I like what I like. I have like books that I haven't printed because I wanted the visual. But it
Yeah.
was just, and my kids like reading it. Like I let them read what I wrote on the paper and stuff like that.
How
But
old are
I'm
your
like,
kids?
well, right now my son is 11 and my daughter is 7.
Well, you know,
So
Kwame Alexander is a great writer that your son would like, the crossover, which is in fact going to be a television show on
ooh,
Disney. That doesn't happen to us often. So I'm really
yes,
proud of Kwame Alexander. Um,
I'm right
uh,
now.
so you have him. Your daughter might, well, Sharon Draper might be a little older. If your daughter's 7, right?
Yeah.
But there are
And
a
this
lot
started
of
6 years ago. This happened. So like now I have collections
Kelly
of books.
Starling, Kelly
Hmm.
Lyons, Lyons, Starling would be somebody I think your daughter would enjoy. She does different kinds of books. And the thing about it is, once you're started finding some Black authors, then we all follow each other on Twitter and all this stuff. Then you can pick and find all these other, you can find a world of Black authors who are doing an array of stuff. If you like
Yes.
city people, they have that. If you like somebody that's nonfiction, historical, you have an array of authors that you could, just by being on social media in a way you couldn't have done 20 years ago.
That is a fact because now that my son is going into the 6th grade this summer, I have been doing a lot of research because I told him, I said, you into 6th grade, it's going to get harder. You have to read more. And I've been trying to find different like um, poems, nonfiction, different things to say. You have to. He's like, well, I don't like reading. I said, Jay, he likes graphic novels. I'm like, Jay, you need to read other stuff. You don't know what you like
Jason
until you.
Reynolds, Jason Reynolds, too.
I
He
believe I
has a
have some books
couple.
from him.
Kwame Alexander has books in verse. That
Hmm.
crossover is a book in verse.
So I've been researching.
Nikki Grimes has a book in verse. I forget about it, but it is about a boy whose father, I don't know if he wants him to be a football player, but he's not, you know, happy with him the way he is. My character's father's not happy with the way he is either. But hers is a book and verse, different kind of book. So that he would, I think he would really like that too. So she has a couple of
Yeah,
books.
I'm trying to get him to explore. Baby girl, we're just working on. She's just now starting to independent read because
Yeah, yeah.
last year, which is that was her first year of actually being in person in school since the pandemic. So we're just working on her independent reading. But I'm telling you, Sharon, you just don't know how what your gift that you gave to the world and me, and like you said, changes our life and we stay loyal because I would never forget the first book I read. I loved the book and I always start and I have more books of yours. I just didn't have time to go find all the books. So I just grab them really fast. But I kept saying, Mom, can you give me books by this lady? Mom, can you give me some more books by this lady? Because it sparked something in me. I didn't like to read. I wasn't a comfortable reader. And when I actually read a whole book, I was proud. And then I actually liked the book. So I kept on wanting to read more books by you. And still to this day, when I saw that there was a sequel, I was like, I have to buy her book. This is 22 years later. I was like, I have to buy this book. And I was like, oh, I wonder if she's on Facebook. I wonder if she's on Instagram. I want to know if she'll talk to me. And my mom was like, what the heck? Why don't you ask her? I was like, I hope this is really her. But me, from a little girl, I still remember how I felt all those
Wow.
years when I accomplished that. And seeing a book with, like you see, I still have the original splitting over here. I don't care. I was not getting rid of this book. And then I still bought, a newer copy, guys. But it just meant something to me, and it will always mean something to me. And I just really appreciate you coming on here, spending some time with us. And I know you're busy because you have to write the third book. I'm so excited about that. But it just, you don't know how much you made my day, my whole week that you came over here. It's actually really
Oh,
you. I was like,
thank
I hope
you.
it's really her. And you inspired me, and I hope other people, I know they're going to go back because they always go back and watch all my stuff, see this and get inspired as well to not just about reading, but find out what your passion is. Not doing stuff just to try to get a dollar. That doesn't help anybody. And supporting more people who happen to look like us and are doing great things in the field. And this book, definitely for young readers, even adults, is a great way to start. It's not profanity. It's not like, oh, what is my kid reading? You can read all the books, and it's very relatable. So I really want to say thank you, and I want to give you this time to tell everybody where they can follow you, where they can get all your books, and whatever else you want to tell us.
Well, thank you, Whitney, again for having me. I um I always tell people I still feel like I died and went to heaven to be able to do this, because my whole personal journey for myself is I felt people will say, are you Malika, right? And I'm like, no, but the part of her that feels small and little, the feeling of her is me, not the situations, but I felt small. I felt little. So for God to take me and sort of give me this big stage has always been like a wonder. And for people like you, young people who literally, I was 42 when I got published, but I grew up um, in front of them, in front of their audiences in schools, and they didn't know it, right? I started standing taller. I started believing in myself more because fifth graders and sixth graders and seventh graders, right? Let me be me on that stage and in that place. And we sort of got to do that together. I was cheering them on in my books and in public and in those stages, and they were cheering me on in those stages. And so people forget often that there's this symbiotic sort of relationship between the author and the writer. And there's a spiritual thing writing books that I think authors don't talk enough about, that we don't even control. I can't say, one day Whitney's going to read my book and have me on her show. I'm like, I can't do that. That's something bigger than me. And so I'm grateful to be here. Um, you can reach me by SharonGFlake.com, and go to my website. And if you want to write to me from there, it comes right to my Gmail. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, um, all over the place. I'm easy to find, sort of. I do school visits and that kind of thing. Um, but my biggest thing is always hoping that people find their own voices, that people realize it's not too late. Sometimes people are like, I'm 42. Well, I wasn't published till I was 42, right?
Yes, you
The
do.
skin, the sequel to The Skin I'm In came out last year. I was 65, and I was up, like I said, for a $50,000 prize. That was the biggest recognition of my work ever. Um, and next year, the third book and the sequel comes out. And I'm hoping that, always that my work does a lot of good on the planet. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to show up. And so I think I'm really good at showing up. And a lot of those years in school, I was showing up shaking in my boots, whether kids knew it or not, right? Um, and I just, I grew up on the stage. I grew up in front of them, and they let me grow up in front of them. And for that, Miss Whitney, I will always be grateful to young people. And then, then there's always, I still got a 16-year-old and an 8-year-old in this body. And so that's probably why I could do what I do too.
Well, I want to thank you. I know I'm going to tell you right now on your IG, I'm going to message you. Hi, Sharon. I want to order your book and I want you to sign it for me. So please, me.
Okay. And people that want to get it, you can get it off of Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Nobles. And if
But
you
I'm
don't
not
see
going
it
to
in
have
the
your
desk,
signature on it. I
well,
want a
no,
special note. Here, Whitney, my favorite person.
I could do that. But I mean, for
So,
all those other people, they could do that and they could get it. They could order it. They could get some of the audios are amazing for some of the books. I will tell you, the Life I'm
mhm.
in audio is amazing. The person that did that did a really amazing job.
Okay, I
Pinned
gotta.
audio, the Skin I'm in audio, that's pretty good.
Okay. So I'm serious. I want the book. I'm gonna say, hey, I'll put on the camera the cost. I'm gonna see the money. I want a signed copy. But last 2 weeks ago, I was in New Orleans and I was at an author conference, and I got a book for all the authors that have signed. It's like, and I talked to them. I said, I can't believe you're actually here. I'm like, you're the Whitney who talks to me on social media. I was like, yes, it's me. Please sign to the Whitney who
The
talks to
Whitney
me
Whitney. Well,
because
you're
some of them.
sending.
when you don't see people and then you meet them, they're like, "Oh, it's Whitney." Whitney. I'm like, "Yeah, that's me," and because it's like
That's
it
it.
clicks. So just write that because I'm very adamant about supporting people, and for people to take the time to talk to me, even all other authors to respond back to me. Everybody doesn't always respond back to people. I'm like, I talk to you later, and I just appreciate that people who took the time to say hi or say, "Oh, that's great." I will promote all day just because someone took time out their day to just reply back to a message that's it. And most of it is like, I love your work, but you have been because of you. Last year, I made a goal that I want to read 150 books, and I've been
Ooh,
subconscious. Yeah, I was subconscious about reading. I have been. My mom can tell you in the background. That's why your book, like one of my first interviews when I started this book club, I told my story about my reading journey, and it was not easy. So I've always been subconscious, like am I reading right? Am I, writing also. So to girl in middle school to accomplish reading a full book, like that was huge in my life. I didn't never think I could. And it made me feel good. And last year, I gave myself a challenge because my husband, he likes to challenge me in things. I'm very competitive. He said, "Why don't you read?" Because that was a soft spot. I was like, "You know what? I'll read 150 books." And I read over 150 books last year. This
wow.
year, already on my Goodreads, I read over, hold on, I'm going to tell you right now. But I'm adamant. I read every single day. I don't watch TV anymore, only on the weekends when with my kids, because I do movies with them. Okay, can you guys see this? Let me see if you can see it good. Let me see. Get this light out of here. How can I? Let me dim this light to see if you can see it. If I dim it, can you see that? Can I see? Wait, you see that? 92 books
Wow.
so far this year. I read 92 books because I said to myself, like you say, can't be scared. I'm like, you know what? Every day I'm
You can
going
be
to read.
scared, but do it
But
anyway.
still do it. Do it. I was like, I
Do it
gotta do
anyway.
it. And every day, people like, how do you do it? I said, I don't watch TV. I run my business, so at night when people usually watching TV, I'm sitting down reading. I don't watch
So
any
what's your
TV.
business?
I have a travel business,
Oh, is that what
so
Whitney's Escapes? Oh, I have to talk to
yeah,
you. I'm just curious. Well,
I
I
do.
have to
And I
talk.
tell people that's another reason how I escaped into books. I just came back from Panama, so my husband got me recording. He's like, "You're reading the whole time on the beach." I'm like, "Cause that's my mental space. I love to read. I love to go into characters to just get away of escaping. You'll find me reading. If I'm not working or with my kids, I am reading a book. So I just want to, you don't know how you just made my whole day right now. You have no idea. I
Well,
am
Miss
very
Whitney,
honored. I you'd have
I'm
no
sweet.
everyone who you could ask anybody who knows me, even the libraries. I made them order your book at that library. So this book is in the my local library here in Connecticut because they did
Because of
not
you.
have
Well,
it.
thank you.
I said, you need to order her books. Your books are there down the street from my house. Um, and that's how much you meant to me. Even though I didn't know
Thank
you and I
you.
got to see
Right.
you, but that was huge in my life. That's why I will always follow you and always support you. And I'm going to DM you. Please find a book copy for me.
Well,
And my
yeah,
children,
let's talk. I'd love to hear more about your business.
oh,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, so let's maybe we can talk when I get when I won't say where I'm at, but
After
maybe in
you're
a couple
done
of weeks.
writing your book, I don't want your publisher coming after me.
No, I have to. I no, literally, I hand it in tomorrow. I just people I think don't even understand, especially when you come to deadline time. And my
Hmm.
brothers, the sisters are like, "Oh, we didn't know it was like that." It's like, "Okay, I've been in the same clothes for about 2 days." I was putting it. I usually write 5 hours a day. I was putting in 10 hours, and it gets to the point where your brain is mushed. And like today, it's just I didn't have a lot more to do, but my brain was mushed. And then,
Hmm.
but at the same time, there's this part of you that's still saying, yeah, but you should do this little bit here. And I literally, about 2 hours, had to say, brain, we're going to wait till tomorrow because you're going to be fresh then. Right now, you're just mushy. And it's just going to be, it's not hard what I have to do. Literally, the next maybe, you'll think it's 2 hours, but one day I was working on the same 3 pages for like 4 hours. And I wasn't even doing stuff from scratch. And then the next day, I went through 40 pages because I'm like, you know, rereading, critiquing. And then I went through 40 and they were just great. But it could be a tough climb when it comes time to hand in the book where you're like going over it, and people don't realize it's a 240-page book, and I might have to read that book from cover to cover 3 times in a week, right? So I'm going to let you go because I need to go deal with my father.
Oh,
Tell your
sweet.
mother thank her so much. I see people in the background.
That's my son over here, the 11-year-old. This is my 7-year-old chocolate baby who's they're tanner than tan from our trip.
Hi.
But she's working on independent reading and he's working on reading more. So this is the author who wrote this book that I got for baby girl. But I'm gonna let him read it because you said that the third book is about the guy. So I want him to read along the journey and he can read that independently now. So thank you so much. And I'm going to be talking to you in your DM. So expect to hear from me.
I will. And thank you, Whitney Escape fans out there.
Thank you so much. Have a
Bye.
great evening.
Tell
Bye.
your mommy I said hi.
Yeah.